radio talk show host and MSNBC contributor. Also with us, Steve Deace, a nationally syndicated radio show host who, by the way, still hanging on to that Newt Gingrich endorsement. We'll have to speak about that later. But, Steve, let me start off here. I couldn't help but to notice, when on Drudge Report, the headline on Drudge, Satan is attacking the great institutions of America. He has up audio from a few years ago of Rick Santorum basically saying we're under attack by Satan in this country. I could not help but to notice, because Drudge and many other members of the GOP establishment went after Newt Gingrich when they thought he was a real threat to Mitt Romney. So what do we make of this headline on the conservative website Drudge?
They're going to help Rick Santorum, Tamron, is what they're going to do. I mean, I just returned from the National Religious Broadcasters.
How does that help him with this Satan is attacking the America line?
The reason they're going to help him is because it looks like what they're doing is doing the left's dirty work for them against the social conservatives and the Christians in their own base. They're going to rally Christians to Rick Santorum. And Christians, really, I mean, the faithful people that go to church every Sunday, as much as the Republican Party doesn't want to admit this, makes up the bulk of its base. I mean, Barack Obama was right. We do cling to our guns and our religion. He was right about that. And if they continue to attack Rick Santorum like this, they're actually going to propel him to the nomination, because they're going to make everybody think, hey, this is the guy the party establishment can't stand, so get on with him to stick it to them.
All right, Michael, let me bring you on. You live in Pennsylvania, the state the president was referring to in those infamous words that Republicans like to say, clinging to guns and Bibles and religion. What do you make of Rick Santorum being willing to stick to his guns, so to speak? And really, these remarks now, he's starting off with the economy, but we know very soon that red meat will come out, because that's what's been fueling him.
I think that Steve is correct in the short term, that this is absolutely going to help Rick Santorum with the base, but it will spell doom for a candidacy like his in the long term, because I think there are many Americans on the sidelines who don't have a dog in this fight in primary season, who are going to hold all the cards in the general, who are horrified that you know, the idea that we're going to have what now, a theology litmus test? My goodness, what separates us from Iran or Al-Qaeda if all of a sudden we're talking about the theological principles of our respective candidates? I just find it abhorrent. I really do.
Well, this is not a new conversation. I mean, when we started out here, many people thought that Mitt Romney, being a Mormon, would be a part of the reason that maybe Southern conservatives would not vote for him. Franklin Graham was on Morning Joe this morning. He, you know, kind of winced when discussing Mormonism and Mitt Romney, but said he would support him if he got the nomination. In fact, he questioned again the president's faith and whether the president is a real Christian. I want to play what he said on Morning Joe and what Jay Carney just said a short time ago in the briefing.
I just don't get it, Reverend. I don't mean to, like, harp on this because we have other things to talk about, but why can't you just say, yeah, I believe he's a Christian. He said he's a Christian. He goes to church. He practices his faith. I don't get it.
And that's all I can go on. And I've told people this many times. I accept him as what he says. If he says he's a Christian, I accept that. I'm not going to say he's not. All I know is what Jesus Christ has done in my heart and how he changed my life.
He firmly believes that getting an extra $40 in every paycheck is of vastly greater significance to most Americans than someone's opinion expressed on cable television about his personal faith, which, again, he has spoken about explicitly as recently as a few weeks ago at the National Prayer Service.
So, Michael, part of what Franklin Graham also said was that he spoke with the president and asked him, you know, when did you come to Christianity? And he, for some reason, at least the way he articulated it on Morning Joe, didn't quite buy the story, but he buys that Rick Santorum is an authentic Christian, however that is defined these days. Nevertheless, I think, speak in terms of religion shouldn't be a part of our political dialogue, and I personally don't think it should be, but it is. It is fantasy land to think that it won't always rear its head, and that's why Rick Santorum went on Fox News and brought up the Reverend Jeremiah Wright's story. It is factual. We know that by now, but he knew what he was doing with those words.
Well, but okay, but then don't try and say that when you assert that the president is associated with some, quote, phony theology, don't try to then mask that in the context of an environmental conversation. Because the way that I'm taking this is that this is a slightly more sophisticated version of the internet that the emails that I get every day that say, you know, you must read this, and then it wants to sell me on some cockamamie theory about what? That the president is an other. He's not one of us. He's not a Christian. He's a Muslim. He wasn't born here. And all that crap that has been debunked over a period of years. It's all that all over again. And I just find it frightening. And I have to say this. People need to read that First Amendment. We have freedom of religion. We also have freedom from religion. It guarantees both. And that's being violated in this conversation.
Steve, let me bring you in quickly here in that, as I pointed out earlier, Rick Santorum does not plan to back away from these social issues. Chris Matthews asked what I thought was the question here. Is this a trap? Is he going where Mitt Romney cannot go, cannot follow, doesn't dare to follow?
Yes is the answer, and it's strategically the right play for Rick Santorum. Remember, I was on here a week ago, and I heard you mention Ari Fleischer saying what I said on your show a week ago. If Mitt Romney loses Michigan to Rick Santorum, Romney is done as a presidential candidate. Rick Santorum will be the nominee. Romney will not survive losing Michigan to Rick Santorum. For
what it's worth, Rupert Murdoch, the former employer of Rick Santorum, tweeted, "From a distance, Santorum doing great. Values really do count in America." And basically he says, win Michigan, game over. Steve, thank you. Michael, thank you as well.